She didn't leave after the argument. There wasn't one. She left the morning she realized he'd made a decision about her, and didn't think to ask. The house was quiet in that particular way it only got after sunrise. Too still. As if it were holding its breath. Claire stood in the kitchen barefoot, the tile cold beneath her feet, staring at the coffee maker like it had personally betrayed her. The clock on the oven read 6:12 a.m. Daniel was still upstairs, probably asleep, probably thinking everything was fine. That was the part that hurt the most. She poured herself coffee anyway. Muscle memory. 13 years of mornings didn't disappear just because something inside her had finally shifted. Outside, the neighborhood looked the same as it always did: trimmed hedges, early joggers, sprinklers ticking softly. A normal life. A good life, by most standards. She leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. It hadn't felt dramatic when she found out. That was what surprised her. No spike of anger. No rush of panic. Just a quiet, settling understanding. He'd already decided. The email had been open on his laptop, glowing faintly in the dim light of his office. She hadn't gone in there to snoop. She'd been looking for the warranty paperwork for the dishwasher. Instead, she saw her name. I've spoken with HR. It's handled. She won't need to be involved. Her stomach had dropped, not sharply, but steadily, like an elevator descending without warning. She'd read it twice. Then a third time. He'd contacted someone at her firm. Used a connection he'd built over decades. Quietly redirected the decision she'd been waiting weeks to hear about. The project she hadn't told anyone about yet. The one that would have put her back in a leadership role after years of consulting. The one she wanted to earn. Handle. She took a sip of coffee now, and barely tasted it. Footsteps creaked above her. A drawer opened. Closed. Daniel came down the stairs a few minutes later, already dressed for work. Pressed shirt, tie in hand. The same calm competence that had once drawn her in. "Morning," he said easily. "You're up early, so are you?" He smiled, distracted, and reached for a mug. "Big day." "For you," she said. He paused, just briefly. "For us." She watched him closely then. The familiar lines at the corners of his eyes. The confidence in the way he moved through the room, like it belonged to him, like she belonged to him. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "Yes." It wasn't a lie. She just hadn't rested. He poured coffee, leaned against the counter across from her. "You're quiet. I found the dishwasher paperwork." He nodded. "Good. I'll call the service company later." Claire set her mug down carefully. "I also found your email." The air changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Daniel's expression stayed calm. "Too calm? Which email?" "The one where you told my firm I wouldn't need to be involved." He didn't respond right away. He took a sip of coffee. Set the mug down. "I was going to tell you," he said. "When?" "After it was finalized. So after it couldn't be undone." He exhaled slowly. "Claire, why?" she asked. Her voice surprised even her. Steady. Controlled. Daniel rubbed his thumb along the rim of the mug. "I didn't want you to be disappointed." She almost laughed. "Almost. You didn't want me to be disappointed," she repeated. "So you decided for me. I was trying to help." "No," she said quietly. "You were trying to manage the outcome." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair, isn't it?" He straightened, that familiar posture sliding into place. "You've said yourself you're tired." "You didn't want the pressure. I just removed the stress." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "I wanted the choice," she said. He frowned. "This isn't worth turning into a bigger issue than it is." That was it. That was the sentence. The moment she understood this wasn't about the job. Or the email. Or even this morning. It was about how easily he believed he knew what was best for her. She nodded once. "You're right." Relief flickered across his face. "Good." She turned and walked down the hall. Daniel blinked. "Where are you going?" "To get dressed." She moved through the bedroom slowly, deliberately. The closet doors slid open. She chose clothes she hadn't worn in years: jeans, a sweater, comfortable shoes. Not running clothes. Leaving clothes. Daniel appeared in the doorway, confusion creeping in. Claire? She folded a sweater into her overnight bag. Then another. What are you doing? He asked. I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days. For a few days? His voice sharpened. Over an email? She zipped the bag and finally looked at him. Over a pattern, she said. He stared at her, searching for something: anger, hysteria. Anything he could respond to. She gave him none of it. I love you, he said, softer now. I've always taken care of you. She lifted the bag and brushed past him. I know. At the front door, she paused. The house smelled like coffee and familiarity. Like the life she'd built carefully, patiently, alongside him. She turned back once. When did you stop believing I could take care of myself? Daniel didn't answer. And as Claire stepped outside into the cool morning air, she wondered, not for the first time, whether love that removed her voice had ever really been love at all. The drive to her sister's house took 40 minutes. Claire knew because she'd made it dozens of times before, usually with a casserole in the passenger seat and a list of things she planned to say and never did. This time, the seat beside her was empty. The radio stayed off. She needed the quiet. At a red light, her phone buzzed. Daniel. She didn't open it. The light turned green. She drove on. It wasn't that she didn't love him anymore. That would have been easier, cleaner, something she could explain to herself without circling the truth. She loved him. That was the problem. Love had made her patient, had made her flexible, had made her quieter than she'd ever been in her life. By the time she pulled into her sister Anne's driveway, the sun was fully up. The house looked the same as always: white siding, wind chimes on the porch, a car that needed washing. Familiar in a way that made her chest ache. Anne opened the door before Claire even knocked. You look like someone who's about to apologize for something that isn't her fault, Anne said. Stepping aside, Claire smiled weakly. Still terrifyingly accurate, I see. Anne pulled her into a hug that was firm and unhesitating. No questions yet. Just contact. Claire let herself lean into it for one quiet moment before pulling back. I'm not staying forever, she said automatically. Anne raised an eyebrow. You never do. They moved into the kitchen. Anne poured coffee without asking. Claire sat at the small table and wrapped her hands around the mug, grateful for the heat. So, Anne said, leaning against the counter. Do you want to start with the surface version or the real one? Claire stared into her cup. The real one. I'm too tired for summaries. Anne nodded. Okay, Claire told her. About the email. About the decision. About the way Daniel had looked relieved when she'd agreed it wasn't worth making bigger than it was. Anne listened without interrupting. She always had that gift holding space without trying to fix it. When Claire finished, Anne exhaled slowly. That's not about the job, Anne said. I know. That's about him being comfortable deciding where your edges are. Claire swallowed. I didn't realize how often it's happened until I stopped and looked back. Anne's voice softened. When did it start? Claire leaned back in the chair, eyes drifting to the window. After my father died, she said quietly. Daniel handled everything. The paperwork. The calls. The logistics. I was grateful. I leaned on him. That makes sense. And then, Claire continued, I stayed leaned. Anne didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The phone buzzed again on the table. Daniel. Claire flipped it face down. I don't think he sees it as control, Claire said. I think he thinks he's being loving. Anne tilted her head. That doesn't make it harmless. I know. Silence settled between them. Comfortable. Heavy. Are you going back? Anne asked eventually. Claire shook her head. Not yet. For how long? I don't know. That answer scared her more than she expected. Later that afternoon, Claire took a walk. The neighborhood was quieter than hers. Older trees. Fewer expectations. She found herself breathing deeper without trying. Her phone buzzed again. This time she opened it. Daniel, can we talk? She stared at the screen. Claire, not today. The reply came almost immediately. Daniel, I don't understand why you're doing this. Her thumb hovered. Then she typed. Claire. That's the problem. She slipped the phone into her pocket and kept walking. That night, lying in the guest room, Claire stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly above her. The sheets smelled like laundry detergent instead of familiarity. She thought about the first year with Daniel. How he'd asked her opinion on everything. How he'd admired her independence like it was something rare. She wondered when admiration had turned into management. Down the hall, Anne's house settled with the quiet creaks of age. Claire turned onto her side. She wasn't angry, she was grieving. The next morning, she woke to sunlight and the faint sound of Anne on a conference call. Claire padded into the kitchen and made toast. Her phone sat on the counter. Silent now. She picked it up and opened her email. There was a message from her firm. New subject line. Neutral tone. We'd like to discuss alternative roles if you're still interested. Her chest tightened. Still interested. She closed the laptop. For the first time in years, the next step was hers to choose. But she also knew something else. Daniel wouldn't let this go quietly. Not because he was cruel, but because he was unused to being left behind. Claire leaned against the counter, toast cooling in her hand, and wondered whether love could survive the moment it was finally questioned. Daniel showed up on Anne's doorstep 3 days later. Claire knew it was him before Anne even opened the door. She felt it in the way the house shifted, in the subtle tightening in her chest that came from years of learning his rhythms. He never rushed. Never arrived flustered. He believed in timing. Anne glanced down the hall. Do you want me to tell him you're not here? Claire considered it. The old instinct, to delay, to soften, to manage his disappointment rose automatically. No, she said finally. I'm here. Daniel stood on the porch with his jacket folded over his arm. Tie loosened, hair just slightly out of place. Not accidental. He always knew how to look approachable when he wanted to be. Hi, he said. Hi. Anne didn't invite him in. She stepped back deliberately and said, Kitchen's down the hall, before disappearing into the living room. Daniel followed Claire inside, stopping a few feet away as if he understood on some level that closeness now required permission. I've been calling, he said. I know. You stopped answering. Yes, he nodded, absorbing that. I don't want this to turn into something bigger than it is. Claire looked at him. Really looked at him. That sentence, she said quietly. You keep saying it like it's neutral. Daniel frowned. It is. This is a misunderstanding, Claire. I stepped in because I could. Because I didn't want you to be disappointed. You keep saying that, she replied. As if disappointment is the worst thing that could happen to me. He sighed. You're tired. You've said it yourself. I thought, you thought for me. The words hung between them. Calm. Undeniable. Daniel crossed his arms, not defensive, just habitual. I've always taken care of things. Yes, she said. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking whether I wanted you to. He shook his head slightly. That's not fair. You benefited from it. She didn't argue. That was the point. Do you know what it felt like? She said. Finding out everyone else knew before I did? His eyes flickered. I didn't think. No, she interrupted gently. You didn't think I'd mind. Silence stretched. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space. Daniel's voice softened. I love you. I know. I would never hurt you on purpose. I know that too. He stepped closer. She didn't step back, but she didn't step forward either. Then why are you doing this? He asked, why are you pulling away like I betrayed you? Claire swallowed. Because you didn't betray my trust, she said. You bypassed it. That landed. Daniel looked away, running a hand through his hair. I was trying to protect us. From what? From instability, he said. From unnecessary risk. She nodded slowly. You mean from me choosing something you couldn't control? He looked at her sharply. That's not. It is, she said, not unkindly. And I don't think you realized it until now. He stared at her like he was seeing a version of her he hadn't accounted for. I don't want to lose you, he said. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. I don't want to lose myself, she replied. Daniel exhaled, long and controlled. So what are you saying? I'm saying, she began, choosing each word carefully, that I need space to decide who I am without being managed. His jaw tightened. Managed? Yes. He shook his head, frustrated now. You make it sound calculated. Like I planned to diminish you. I don't think you planned it, she said. I think it happened because you're good at taking charge and I let you. That stopped him. I let you, she repeated. That part is on me. His shoulders eased slightly. Then we can fix this, can we? She asked. Because fixing it would mean you trusting me with outcomes you don't like. He hesitated. Just for a second. She saw it. The pause before agreement. The instinct to negotiate. That was the answer. I need time, she said. How much? I don't know. Daniel nodded slowly, like he was memorizing something he didn't want to forget. Are you seeing someone? No. Is there someone else? No. Relief passed over his face, and that too told her something. This isn't about replacing you, she said. It's about meeting myself again. He studied her. And if you decide you don't want to come back? Claire met his gaze steadily. Then I'll tell you. He swallowed. And if I change? She considered him, this man she'd built a life with, loved deeply, trusted completely. Change isn't something you announce, she said. It's something I'll feel. They stood there. The distance between them no longer physical but unmistakable. Anne appeared quietly at the end of the hall. Coffee's getting cold, she said, not looking at either of them. Daniel took that as his cue. He picked up his jacket, hesitated, then said, I hope you know I never meant to silence you. Claire nodded. I believe that. He paused at the door. Call me? She didn't answer right away. I will, she said finally. When I'm ready. Daniel left without another word. That night, Claire lay awake listening to the unfamiliar quiet of Anne's house. She felt hollow in places, steadier in others. She thought about the email. The choice that had been taken. The one she'd handed over slowly. Willingly, out of love, for the first time. She wasn't wondering whether Daniel would change. She was wondering whether she would still choose him if he did. Daniel showed up on Anne's doorstep 3 days later. Claire knew it was him before Anne even opened the door. She felt it in the way the house shifted, in the subtle tightening in her chest that came from years of learning his rhythms. He never rushed, never arrived flustered. He believed in timing. Anne glanced down the hall. Do you want me to tell him you're not here? Claire considered it. The old instinct, to delay, to soften, to manage his disappointment rose automatically. No, she said finally. I'm here. Daniel stood on the porch with his jacket folded over his arm, tie loosened, hair just slightly out of place. Not accidental. He always knew how to look approachable when he wanted to be. Hi, he said. Hi. Anne didn't invite him in. She stepped back deliberately and said, Kitchen's down the hall, before disappearing into the living room. Daniel followed Claire inside, stopping a few feet away as if he understood on some level that closeness now required permission. I've been calling, he said. I know. You stopped answering. Yes, he nodded, absorbing that. I don't want this to turn into something bigger than it is. Claire looked at him. Really looked at him. That sentence, she said quietly. You keep saying it like it's neutral. Daniel frowned. It is. This is a misunderstanding, Claire. I stepped in because I could. Because I didn't want you to be disappointed. You keep saying that, she replied. As if disappointment is the worst thing that could happen to me. He sighed. You're tired. You've said it yourself. I thought, you thought for me. The words hung between them. Calm. Undeniable. Daniel crossed his arms, not defensive, just habitual. I've always taken care of things. Yes, she said. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking whether I wanted you to. He shook his head slightly. That's not fair. You benefited from it. She didn't argue. That was the point. Do you know what it felt like? She said. Finding out everyone else knew before I did? His eyes flickered. I didn't think. No, she interrupted gently. You didn't think I'd mind. Silence stretched. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space. Daniel's voice softened. I love you. I know. I would never hurt you on purpose. I know that too. He stepped closer. She didn't step back, but she didn't step forward either. Then why are you doing this? He asked. Why are you pulling away like I betrayed you? Claire swallowed. Because you didn't betray my trust, she said. You bypassed it. That landed. Daniel looked away, running a hand through his hair. I was trying to protect us. From what? From instability, he said. From unnecessary risk. She nodded slowly. You mean from me choosing something you couldn't control? He looked at her sharply. That's not. It is, she said, not unkindly. And I don't think you realized it until now. He stared at her like he was seeing a version of her he hadn't accounted for. I don't want to lose you, he said. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. I don't want to lose myself, she replied. Daniel exhaled, long and controlled. So what are you saying? I'm saying, she began, choosing each word carefully, that I need space to decide who I am without being managed. His jaw tightened. Managed. Yes. He shook his head. Frustrated now. You make it sound calculated. Like I planned to diminish you. I don't think you planned it, she said. I think it happened because you're good at taking charge and I let you. That stopped him. I let you, she repeated. That part is on me. His shoulders eased slightly. Then we can fix this, can we? She asked. Because fixing it would mean you trusting me with outcomes you don't like. He hesitated. Just for a second. She saw it. The pause before agreement. The instinct to negotiate. That was the answer. I need time, she said. How much? I don't know. Daniel nodded slowly, like he was memorizing something he didn't want to forget. Are you seeing someone? No. Is there someone else? No. Relief passed over his face, and that too told her something. This isn't about replacing you, she said. It's about meeting myself again. He studied her. And if you decide you don't want to come back? Claire met his gaze steadily. Then I'll tell you. He swallowed. And if I change? He swallowed. And if I change? She considered him, this man she'd built a life with, loved deeply, trusted completely. Change isn't something you announce, she said. It's something I'll feel. They stood there, the distance between them no longer physical, but unmistakable. Anne appeared quietly at the end of the hall. Coffee's getting cold, she said, not looking at either of them. Daniel took that as his cue. He picked up his jacket, hesitated, then said, I hope you know I never meant to silence you. Claire nodded. I believe that. He paused at the door. Call me? She didn't answer right away. I will, she said finally. When I'm ready. Daniel left without another word. That night, Claire lay awake listening to the unfamiliar quiet of Anne's house. She felt hollow in places, steadier in others. She thought about the email. The choice that had been taken. The one she'd handed over slowly. Willingly, out of love, for the first time. She wasn't wondering whether Daniel would change. She was wondering whether she would still choose him if he did. The coffee shop was halfway between their lives. Not close enough to feel like habit, Not far enough to feel like escape. Claire arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table near the window. She liked being able to see the street. Movement grounded her. Gave her something to look at when words ran out. Daniel arrived exactly on time. He paused when he saw her, just long enough for her to notice. Then he walked over, slower than usual, like he was reminding himself not to rush. "Hi," he said. "Hi." He didn't lean in to kiss her cheek. Didn't reach for her hand. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. That restraint mattered more than any apology. They ordered coffee. Black for him. Oat milk for her. 13 years of knowing someone distilled into muscle memory. "I've missed you," he said once the barista walked away. Claire nodded. "I know. I don't expect that to fix anything." "No," he took a breath. "I've been uncomfortable." That caught her attention. "In what way?" "In the way you get when you realize something you thought was a strength has been a flaw all along." She studied his face. There were new lines there. Or maybe she was just seeing them clearly now. "I've always believed taking responsibility was love," he continued. "Stepping in. Making things easier. And now? And now I'm wondering how often I stepped over you instead." She looked down at her hands. "Often enough that I forgot what my own instincts sounded like." He flinched just slightly. "I don't want to be that man," he said. She looked back up. "Then you can't just want me back. You have to want me as I am." "I do," he said immediately. She held his gaze. "Even when I choose something that scares you?" He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. "Yes," he said. But it came slower this time, Claire noticed. She always did. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "You corrected me about the wine list. You told me you liked that I didn't let you be right just because you were confident. I still like that. Then why did you stop trusting it?" Daniel leaned back, exhaling. "Because somewhere along the way, being right felt safer than being uncertain." She nodded. "For you." Silence settled between them. Not heavy. Just honest. "I'm not ready to come home," she said gently. "I know. I don't know if I will be. I know." That answer surprised her. He continued. "I'm not asking for a promise. I'm asking for the chance to show you something different." She tilted her head. "Show me how." "By listening," he said. "And not intervening when it makes me uncomfortable." She smiled faintly. "That sounds harder for you than it does for me." "It is." They sat with that outside. A woman walked past laughing into her phone. Life, continuing. Indifferent to their moment. "Claire," Daniel said quietly, "if you decide not to come back, I don't want our last chapter to be about control." Her chest tightened. "What do you want it to be about?" "Respect," he said. "Even if it costs me." The barista called her name. Claire stood, retrieved her coffee, then returned to the table. She wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. "I'm going to take the job," she said. Daniel didn't ask which one. He didn't question her timing. He simply nodded. "I'm glad," he said. And this time, she believed him. They finished their coffee without rushing. When they stood to leave, Daniel stepped aside to let her go first. Another small thing. Another choice. Outside. They paused on the sidewalk. "I'll call you," she said. "When you're ready," he replied. She walked away without looking back, and for the first time since she'd left the house that morning, Claire didn't feel like she was abandoning something. She felt like she was walking toward herself, uncertain whether Daniel would meet her there. But finally willing to find out, the job started quietly. No celebration. No announcement. Just an email, a calendar invite, and the unfamiliar weight of responsibility settling back into her hands. Claire rented a small apartment closer to the office, nothing dramatic. Just a clean space with light in the mornings and enough room to breathe. She told herself it was temporary. She didn't unpack everything. The first night there, she sat on the floor with a glass of wine and listened to the city through the open window. Sirens in the distance. Laughter drifting up from the sidewalk. Life moving forward without asking for permission. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. She didn't answer right away. She wasn't avoiding him. She was measuring herself. When she finally picked up, his voice was calm. Careful. How was your first day? She smiled. Hard. Good, mine. I'm glad. A pause. I didn't call to ask when you're coming back, he said. I wanted you to know I meant what I said. About listening? Yes. She believed him. And that unsettled her more than doubt ever had. They talked for 20 minutes. Ordinary things. A client she liked. A recipe he'd failed at. Nothing heavy. When they hung up, she stared at the dark screen for a long time. Trust. She was learning. Didn't return all at once. It arrived in pieces. Over the next few weeks, Daniel stayed consistent. He didn't overcorrect. Didn't shower her with apologies or grand gestures. He asked before offering opinions. He waited. Once, when she mentioned a conflict at work, he stopped himself mid-sentence. I'm about to suggest a solution, he said. Do you want that, or do you just want to vent? The question hit her harder than she expected. I want to vent, she said. Okay, he replied. And listen. Another night, she canceled dinner plans at the last minute. Old patterns would have brought tension. This time he simply said, thanks for telling me, and meant it. Still, something lingered between them. Not resentment, caution. One evening, they met for dinner again, this time at a small neighborhood restaurant she'd chosen. He arrived early. She noticed that too. They talked easily, laughed even. It would have been simple to slip back into comfort, but comfort, she'd learned, could be a trap. I need to say something, she said as the plates were cleared. He nodded. Go ahead. If we try again, she said slowly, it can't be based on who we used to be. Or who you thought you were protecting. I understand. And I won't explain my choices to make them easier for you. I wouldn't ask you to. She studied his face, looking for impatience. For negotiation. There was none. Okay, she said softly. Outside, the night air was warm. They stood on the sidewalk, close but not touching. I don't know where this goes, she added. Daniel nodded. Neither do I. She waited. He didn't reach for her. That restraint still mattered. At home later, Claire lay awake thinking about how love changed when you stopped shrinking to keep it. How different it felt to be chosen without being contained. She didn't know if she and Daniel would find their way back to each other. But for the first time she knew this much. If they did, it would be because they both chose her voice to stay in the room. And if they didn't, she would still be whole. The first time Daniel came to her apartment, he brought nothing with him. No overnight bag. No groceries. No assumptions. Claire noticed immediately. She'd invited him over for dinner, her idea, her place, her timing. When she opened the door, he stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, posture easy. Eyes searching her face instead of the room behind her. Hi, he said. Hi. He stepped inside only after she moved aside. The apartment was small but intentional. Neutral walls. One plant by the window. A framed photo of her and Anne on the bookshelf. The kind of space that said, I'm still deciding who I am here. Daniel took it in quietly. It feels like you, he said. That mattered. They cooked together, bumping elbows, negotiating space without words. When he reached for a spice, he paused. Is that okay? He asked. She smiled despite herself. Yes. Dinner was simple. Pasta, salad, wine she liked, not the one he would have chosen. They talked about work, about a movie she'd seen alone the week before, about nothing that needed managing. Afterward, they sat on opposite ends of the couch. Not distant. Not merged. I've been thinking about something, Daniel said. She waited. When you left, he continued, I kept replaying the moment you asked me when I stopped believing you could take care of yourself. Her chest tightened. I don't think I ever stopped believing it, he said. I think I stopped trusting that it wouldn't cost us something. She turned toward him. And now? And now I see that it already did. Silence settled between them. The good kind. The kind that let truth breathe. I'm not asking you to come back, he added. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She studied him. Then why are you here? Because I want to know you, he said simply. Not the version that fits into my life. The one you're becoming. Something in her softened. She shifted closer, not touching, just nearer. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of you. Of losing myself again. I know, he said. And if I ever make you feel like that, I want you to tell me. Even if it means walking away. That was new. Not the words, but the willingness behind them. She nodded. I will. They didn't kiss that night. When he left. He stood at the door for a moment, then said, Thank you for letting me be here. She watched him walk down the hallway before closing the door. Later, lying in bed, Claire stared at the ceiling and let herself feel it all, the hope, the caution. The quiet ache of wanting something that had once hurt her. Second chances, she was learning, weren't about repeating the past. They were about seeing whether two people could meet again, without shrinking, without managing, without fear pretending to be love. She didn't know the answer yet, but for the first time, she trusted herself enough to wait and find out. The first real test came quietly. Not with a crisis. Not with an argument. With an invitation. Daniel mentioned it casually over the phone one evening. There's a dinner next week. Work-related, some people I've known a long time. Claire leaned against her kitchen counter, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Are you asking me to go? I'm asking how you'd feel about it, he said. And if the answer is no, that's the end of it. She closed her eyes. Once, she would have gone without thinking. Smoothed herself into the shape that fit beside him. Learned names, remembered faces, listened politely while decisions were made around her. And if I say yes? She asked. Then we go, he said. And you're there because you want to be. Not because I need you to be. The difference mattered. I need time to think, she said. Take it. She did. For 2 days she sat with the question. Not the dinner itself, but what it represented. Visibility, being seen beside him again. The risk of slipping back into a role she'd outgrown. On the third morning, she texted him. Claire, I'll go. But we leave when I say we leave. The reply came a minute later. Daniel? Of course. The dinner was held at a private restaurant overlooking the river. Warm lighting. Linen tablecloths. Familiar faces that smiled with recognition when they saw him, and then paused, recalibrating when they saw her. Claire felt it. The shift. The unspoken assessment. She didn't shrink. Daniel stayed beside her. Not guiding, not introducing her as an extension of himself. This is Claire, he said simply, every time. No titles. No explanations. At one point, a colleague leaned toward Daniel and said, We should talk about that proposal you mentioned. Daniel glanced at Claire. She raised an eyebrow. I'm fine getting another drink. He shook his head. It can wait. The colleague looked surprised. Then nodded and moved on. Claire exhaled slowly. Later on the terrace, the night air cool against her skin. Daniel joined her at the railing. You okay? He asked. Yes, she said. And meant it. I noticed you didn't step in, she added. Even when it would have been easier. He nodded. I wanted to. She smiled faintly. I know. They stood there. The city lights reflecting. Off the water below. This doesn't mean I'm ready to come back, she said quietly. I know. He replied. But it means I'm not afraid to stand next to you, she continued. As long as I'm standing as myself. Daniel turned toward her, his expression open. That's the only way I want you there. She looked at him, really looked at him. The man he'd been. The man he was trying to become. Somewhere between them. Something fragile and real took shape, not a promise. Not a resolution. Just possibility. As they walked back inside. Claire knew one thing with certainty. If they found their way back to each other, It wouldn't be because love pulled her in. It would be because she chose to stay. And he learned how to let her. Chapter 9. Ending the morning Claire moved back wasn't announced. There were no boxes stacked by the door. No emotional speeches about fresh starts. She brought 2 suitcases, a plant she liked, and the quiet certainty that she could leave again if she needed to. Daniel watched from the doorway. Careful not to hover. Tell me where you want things, he said. She set the plant on the windowsill herself. That's good there. He nodded. Didn't adjust it. They learned each other again in small, deliberate ways. He asked before offering opinions. She spoke before resentment had time to grow. They argued occasionally, but now the arguments ended with listening, not decisions made in private. One evening, weeks later, Claire came home to find Daniel at the table, papers spread in front of him. He looked up as she entered. I need to tell you something, he said. She set her bag down. Okay. I was asked to step in on a situation today, he continued. Old habits. Old expectations. Her chest tightened. And I said no. He didn't say it proudly. He said it like a fact. She studied his face. How did that feel? Uncomfortable, he admitted. Then, after a moment, right? She smiled. Not because he'd changed, but because he'd noticed himself changing. Later that night, they sat on the couch, close but not fused. The television played quietly in the background. Do you ever think about how close we came to losing this? Daniel asked. Yes, she said. But I don't think about it as a loss anymore. He turned toward her. What do you think of it as? A correction, she said. One we were both brave enough to make. He nodded slowly. Thank you for walking away when you did. She met his gaze. Thank you for letting me. They didn't promise forever. They didn't need to. What they had now was better than certainty. It was choice. That night, as Claire turned off the lights and climbed into bed beside him, she rested her head against his shoulder, not because it was familiar, but because it felt earned. And Daniel held her not tightly, not protectively, but with the understanding that love, at its best, doesn't take space away. Makes room.